We're all set, Senator.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome. I'm Senator Ruth Ward from the Senate District 8. Today, we will be holding a meeting of the Senate Education Committee, and we will consider 5 House bills. House Bill 69, 71, 140, 182, and 278. Before we get started, I'll read through a checklist to ensure that the meeting that we're holding is in compliance with the right to know law. As chair of the Education Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04 and its extensions, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. In accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possible by video and other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the committee and selected legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously in this meeting through this platform. And the public has access to contemporaneously watch and or listen to the meeting on Zoom or YouTube and via phone by following the directions and links provided on the General Court website. We have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting in the Senate calendar. We are providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anyone has a problem, please email remotesenate@leg.state.nh.us or call 603-271-6931. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Finally, let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state where you are and if anyone else is in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. I will call the roll. Senator Hennessy.
Good morning, Erin Hennessy from Littleton. I am in my office alone.
Senator Ricciardi.
Good morning, everyone. Denise Ricciardi. I'm in our home in Bedford. I'm in the room alone, but my husband is in the house.
Senator Prentice.
Good morning, Sue Prentice from West Lebanon. I am in my home and my husband is in the house, but not in the same room. Thank you.
Senator Khan is excused. And the chair is Ruth Ward, and I'm here in my home and started alone in this room. Okay, let's start. We'll start with House Bill 69.
Looks like.
Do we have the sponsor here?
We do.
Chris True?
Yes, Senator.
Chris True, go ahead.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. For the record, I am Representative Chris True, Rockingham District 4, with the towns of Auburn, Chester, and Sandown. Thank you for this opportunity to introduce House Bill 69 relative to the display of the national motto in schools. I will begin with those magic words that I always begin with. I will be brief. House Bill 69 is not just enabling legislation, which allows schools to post our country's national motto in school buildings. House Bill 69 also makes a very important statement to the school boards throughout New Hampshire. That is, this bill would protect the schools if displaying the national motto is challenged in court, as the Office of the Attorney General would defend the schools. I believe this provision is very important because without it, school boards could easily be bullied into not posting the national motto by those who would threaten to sue the school if they did. In our recent history, certain groups have sued in federal court to have the national motto removed from all U.S. currency. Even though the U.S. Supreme Court has rejected these suits, the lawsuits have been repeatedly refiled. It is these types of harassment lawsuits that New Hampshire school boards would be defended against with the passage of House Bill 69. House Bill 69 also allows for the schools to accept non-public funds to cover the cost of posting the national motto. I do not agree with those who say that the national motto is anything that would cause acrimony in our schools. I do not hold the belief that our national motto is a divisive phrase. As the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals stated, a reasonable observer would not perceive the national motto as a religious endorsement. Madam Chair and members of the committee, I thank you for your time and for your consideration.
Thank you, Representative True. Question from the board. Here we have Senator Prentice.
Good morning, Representative True, and thank you for joining us this morning. So I have a few questions for you. I was just curious if this was something that was prohibited now. Can schools go ahead and do this if they so choose?
I don't believe there's anything in the, thank you, Senator, for the question. I don't believe there's anything in the RSAs that would prevent them from posting. As I say, the stipulation in the bill says that if somebody threatens lawsuit or brings lawsuit, that's where the protection comes in.
Okay, so they could, Madam Chair, could follow up?
Follow up.
Thank you. So they, if they chose to do this now, they don't really need this legislation to do it except for the protection that this legislation provides, should it be challenged, correct?
I believe that is the way I read the RSAs also, Senator.
Okay, follow up, Senator Ward.
Follow up.
Thank you. So what, do we have Representative True, do we have a statement or an opinion from the Attorney General's office as to what their position is on this?
No, I do not.
Okay, is that something that we should have, or, no, or I just wanted, they're mentioned in here. I don't know if they've been consulted on this and what the precedent would be.
No, I have not spoken with anyone in the Attorney General's office.
Okay. And then one more. I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Okay, that's all right.
And
Go ahead.
Representative True, thank you for taking my questions. So accepting public, non-public funds. So you're saying a private organization could, say, donate money to a school to put this sign up, or that, I don't want to call it a sign because I don't, I don't believe that, I'm not against posting the national motto per se, but I'm just challenging why we actually need this law, who's set up to defend it. And then I am interested in if there's non-public funds brought in, are we setting up like a competitive precedent in school districts? I mean, how would these choices be made if one organization wanted to give money and so did another? I mean, how would that be handled?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I put that stipulation into the bill because say a school district were to say, or the school board were to say, we'd love to do that, but our budget is so tight, we just don't have the money to do that. Then the Lions Club or some other organization could say, we'll cover that. And if 2 or 3 organizations want to pool their funds, then they can say, then we'll cover that. There won't be any expense at all to the school.
Okay. Oh, please,
Okay,
Madam
go
Chair,
ahead.
just one more.
Okay.
And this should have been my first question, but I'm just going to kind of narrow back on if this is already, so that this isn't prohibited. I mean, why are we doing this now? Why do we need, why do we need the state motto? Why do we need this public displayed in the schools?
I believe displaying the national motto, it would be something for the education of the students. The national motto does not need to be posted by the bill. It's all voluntary. And if the school wished to do that, they certainly can, and they would have no fear of additional cost of any lawsuits. The posting of the national motto is just an educational tool. It is our national motto. I mean, it's something that should be discussed in school.
I'm going to let Senator Bouchard. I'll hold my. I will. I'll stop for. I will take a break. Senator Ward, thank you very much. Representative True. I do have just one clarification I need, but I've taken up enough of your time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Senator Bouchard had a question.
Yes, good morning, Representative True. Thank you for your testimony. I was just wondering if it wouldn't be a good idea to add under the national motto, our New Hampshire motto, live free or die. Maybe that would just make it a little bit more New Hampshire centric.
Thank you for the suggestion, Senator. That's the bill is in your possession, and I certainly would not have any objection to that. You know, for the New Hampshire live free or die.
Senator Prentice with one last question.
One last question. State motto, national motto. Just to point out on the introduction page, on the first page for House Bill 69, it refers to this in the analysis as the national motto, but on page 2, it refers to it as the state motto. So I don't know if we need a clarification there.
Yeah,
Is it-
I don't have a copy of the bill, and I apologize for that, Senator.
No,
If that's the way the bill was presented to the Senate, that's a typo. I mean, it wasn't. The suggestion of having live free or die aside, that wasn't part of the original bill. It was just the national motto.
Okay.
And I apologize for not taking a copy of the bill.
It's all good. Representative True, thank you very much. Senator Ward,
You're all set.
for now, I
Senator
am. Thank you.
Senator Hennessy, did you have a question?
I think I just wanted to ask Senator Prentice, was she looking at line 3, where it's the section of the RSA of the state motto?
Yeah. 1, 2. Well, it's in. So I'm actually just looking at the legislation itself, page 2, line 1 and line 3.
So I think that's under the RSA of the state motto,
Okay.
which I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know why either, but I guess we can. That's why we have these hearings and we ask these questions and we figure it out.
That's right.
Okay.
The committee members are all set now? Who is our next person?
Okay. Next, we have BJ Wall.
Welcome.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yep, my name is BJ Wall and I live in Sullivan, New Hampshire, which is near Keene. So I think Senator Ward, no, actually Jay Kahn is my son, never mind. Anyway, I am very opposed to this bill. New Hampshire and Vermont are the 2 least religious states in the Union. And so there are a great many of us in this state who would find this bill very offensive. It is also trying to indoctrinate innocent children into believing in something that may be against their own religion, which may not be the majority religion, or, excuse me, lack thereof. Schools should be inclusive places and not divisive places. And I disagree with Representative True that this isn't a divisive bill, because the very fact that I feel so angry about this and so many other citizens feel angry about it means it is a divisive bill. The church and the home are the place for religion, not government-funded buildings that all taxpayers fund. We don't all believe the same things, no matter how much some of you want us to. And it is not only your beliefs that matter, ours do too. And I think this bill should be not be recommended, and very much oppose this bill. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions from the committee members? I don't see one. Thank you very much. Do we have another one wanting to
Madam
speak?
Chair, we didn't have anyone else signed up to speak. However, the prime sponsor has raised his hand.
Representative Chu? You are.
I apologize, Madam Chair. No, I did that by mistake.
Oh, okay. So we have no more speakers?
No one else signed up. If anyone else wanted to speak, now would be the time to raise your hand. And I don't see any hands.
Okay. Thank you very much. That,
Madam Chair, it looked like Senator
Yes.
just had her hand raised.
who? Oh,
Well, you
Senator
know what,
Prentice.
I'm just gonna look in the OneDrive. I'll figure it out on my own. I'm looking for this, for signs in favor and sign in opposed. I did hear from a lot of constituents, not just in my district, but throughout New Hampshire
Right.
about this, opposed to this particular bill.
Right.
So, but I've got to get in that habit of going to the OneDrive first. Thanks, Ava. I got my stopwatch out.
Okay, let's move on to House Bill 71. And looking for the sponsor of the bill,
Yes,
Representative Bohm.
thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Education Senate Committee. I'm Ralph Bohm, Hillsborough, District 20, Town of Litchfield. And I believe you all have copies of my testimony. So I'll keep it
Yes.
even short.
I
won't-
do.
Good, thank you. So I won't read the whole thing. The main part of this is the law says whether or not the judge shall consider. That makes the current law pretty much useless. And also when the claimed emergency was foreseeable or avoidable, and whether the appropriation could have been made at the annual meeting. But judges still, in the last 6 years, I believe, granted 2 special meetings for failed collective bargaining agreements, when clearly the law says it was foreseeable and avoidable, and there was a special meeting. So, and I mean, there was an annual meeting and the people voted no. So my bill is no means no. And what happened in our town a couple of years ago, the judge called for a special meeting. It was done, even though the people said no at the regular meeting. They called a special meeting. It was done in October, which made the tax bill late, and not many people knew about the special meeting. So it passed, but the problem was people didn't get the tax bill till right before Christmas. So the law was changed in 1998 to prevent a lot of special meetings, but we still have them. So this is just I can't see what was unforeseeable for having a special meeting. So this just makes it clear, no special meetings for a failed collective bargaining agreement. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions from the committee members? I don't see one. Thank you very much, Representative Bohm.
Thank you.
Who do we have next?
Brian Hawkins.
Okay. Mr. Hawkins, welcome.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Terrific. For the record, Brian Hawkins representing NEA New Hampshire. We represent over 17,000 members in the state in education. Most of those are in K through 12 schools. Here today in opposition to this bill. First, I'd say just to give some context, Representative Bohm talked about the frequency of when a provision when the court can allow such an emergency special meeting. This is not a frequent event. To give you some context, we have over 200, we have 235 collective bargaining agreements in the state. And in talking to our general counsel around the history of this, we've only found in her last 6 years at NEA that we've been involved in 2 of these. So 235 contracts over 6 years, and we've been involved in 2 of these. So I think it may have been overstated in terms of the frequency of this being used. As Representative Bone said, that this statute had been put in place to reduce the frequency of these, and at least with respect to collective bargaining agreements, it seems that is the case. The statute also gives guidance in terms of what a court needs to consider. They need to consider the severity of the harm to be avoided, the urgency of the petitioner's need, whether the claimed emergency was foreseeable or avoidable, whether the appropriation could have been made at the annual meeting, and whether the alternative remedies would not require an appropriation. And so in the case that he had mentioned, the court did consider these factors and ultimately granted the emergency meeting. I think the approach of this bill, which is to simply ban this option from being considered by the court, is too much. The previous iteration of this bill not only included the prohibition of considering a subsequent collective bargaining agreement, but also other expenditures by the school district, which were subsequently removed from the bill when a series of examples were given in terms of where this could really tie the hands of the school district should they have an urgency or an emergency that they really needed the court to allow them to have that special meeting. And I think that should have been done to the collective bargaining provision in this bill as well. So I don't think if the legislature, by a matter of policy, feels that greater guidance needs to be given to the court with what to consider or when to allow a meeting through this tool, that's one thing. But I think just the outright ban of it seems extreme to us. And so I'll close my testimony there, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hawkins. Any questions from the members of the committee? I don't see any. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for your time.
And next we have.
Madam Chair, we did not have anyone else signed up to speak to this bill. If anyone does want to speak to House Bill 71, now would be the time to raise your hand. We have Jerry Frew has raised his hand.
Okay. Jerry Frew, welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for taking my testimony this morning. My name is Jerry Frew. I'm the Associate Executive Director for the New Hampshire School Administrators Association. And we'll be very brief in this testimony. NHSA feels that this legislation is unnecessary and could have significant unintended consequences. As it stands now, school districts are allowed to petition for a special meeting for a variety of reasons that are clearly spelled out in RSA 197. I will not go through those reasons, as Mr. Hawkins has already enlightened the committee with those specifics, so I will spare you that time. But we do feel that this proposed legislation eliminates really the locally elected representatives' ability to determine the best course of action for the school district in case of an emergency or a change of circumstances in a district after the district meeting has taken place. And so we feel that it is important to preserve the Superior Court's option And there is already a very high threshold for the granting of these special meetings. And in fact, many of the special meeting requests are in fact denied because they don't rise to the level of need. So we would feel that this legislation is unnecessary and would respectfully request that you find HB 71 as inexpedient to legislate. Thank you for the opportunity to give you testimony this morning, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Frew. Any questions from the committee members? I don't see any. Thank you.
Madam
Any
Chair,
other?
no further speakers on House Bill 71.
Okay, good. That concludes the hearing on HB 71. What do we have? 926. So we can actually start with 140.
Madam Chair, I think that's not scheduled till 9:30, the third bill of today. So we
Right.
can't actually open that hearing until then.
Oh, I see. I have 4 minutes. I'm sorry. I missed.
Sometimes you think we'd be close enough, but we're not today.
Okay,
We're early today, which is great.
so we have a 4-minute break. Wait for 9:30 for the next one. So we now have 9:30 and we can take up House Bill 140. Do we have Representative Cordelli? Yes, he's here. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Ward and members of Senate Education. For the record, I am State Representative Glenn Cordelli, representing Tufton Borough, Moulton Borough, and Sandwich in the beautiful Lakes region. Bullying is a serious issue both nationally and in New Hampshire. In New Hampshire, there were over 1,400 reported cases in the 2019 school year, including 66 documented cases of physical harm. Be aware also that there are estimates that 65% of bullying incidents go unreported. The CDC has stated that even students who witness bullying incidents are impacted. A Yale's review of bullying studies found studies that reported bullying victims were 2 to 9 times more likely to report suicidal thoughts. There have been numerous attempts to deal with bullying in New Hampshire. Has there enough been done? In Senate Education, we heard tearful testimony. We heard stories of neglect and of ignoring of complaints of suicide. And we all have seen media accounts of the impacts of bullying. The current RSA states that nothing shall create a private right of action. In 2015, there was a case, Gautier versus the Manchester School District, that went to the New Hampshire Supreme Court. That case involved an altercation on a school bus with one student being punched in the face. After a week of threatening messages to the student, she was attacked in the cafeteria and had to be transported via ambulance to the emergency room. It was in the emergency room that the parents became aware of the school bus incident. They had never been notified about it. The court ruled in favor of the school district, citing RSA 193 F9 and stating, and I quote, "The statute at issue in this case explicitly states that it does not create a private right of action." HB 140 is very simple. It states that if there is gross negligence or willful misconduct on the part of a school district, there shall be a private right of action. I will point out that 193 F7 states that a school employee shall be immune from civil liberty for good faith conduct arising from or pertaining to the reporting, investigation, response to bullying incidents. And this section is not touched with this legislation. We have talked much about accountability in discussing other legislation, but how about talking about accountability when there is misconduct or negligence on the part of districts in bullying cases? Let me quote to you from our state statutes relating to bullying and student safety. All pupils have the right to attend public schools, including public chartered schools that are safe, secure, and peaceful environment. One of the legislature's highest priorities is to protect our children from physical, emotional, and psychological violence by addressing the harm caused by bullying and cyberbullying in our public schools. We, the general court, need to make sure that bullying issues are being taken seriously and that parents of bullied children are being listened to. It is our duty per state law. We would also like to think that every district is doing everything possible to address and respond to reported bullying cases. That is their duty. But when districts do not follow their own policies or the law, families deserve a remedy. Passing HB 40 will send a message throughout New Hampshire that this legislature is serious about bullying and is standing with bullied students and their families. We owe it to them. I thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Representative Cordelli. Do we have any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Who do we have next?
Representative Erica Leon.
Erica Leon. Welcome. Go ahead. You're muted right now. Okay. Go ahead, Representative Leon.
Representative, we can't hear you. So she is gone. Why don't I move on to the next speaker and maybe
Sure.
she'll join?
Yep.
Okay. Next, we have Barrett Christina.
Mr. Christina, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. For the record, Barrett Christina, Executive Director of the New Hampshire School Boards Association, speaking in opposition to House Bill 140. A few points that I'd like to make. Just as Representative Cordelli cited some provisions in RSA 193, I would like to point the committee to RSA 193-F:2. Paragraph Roman numeral 2. And it states that bullying in schools has historically included actions shown to be motivated by a pupil's actual or perceived race, color, religion, national origin, ancestry, ethnicity, sexual orientation, so on and so forth. Essentially all the protected classes that we find in a myriad of New Hampshire statutes. So the legislature in that statute recognizes that bullying is often the result of a student being picked on or bullied or harassed on the basis of one of these students' protected classes. My point in reading that is to inform the committee and try and convince the committee that House Bill 140 is not needed because there is already a cause of action that exists in New Hampshire law relative to discrimination or bullying or harassment on those protected classes. The pertinent statute, I would direct the committee to RSA 193:38. This was Senate Bill 263 in the 2019 legislative session. This statute states that any person claiming to be aggrieved by a discriminatory practice prohibited under this section may initiate a civil lawsuit against a school or a school district in Superior Court for legal or equitable relief. So there's no need for House Bill 140 when causes of action already exist. You have the statutory cause of action relative to these protected classes under this statute, under RSA 193:38. And the language about the protected classes is not exactly, but essentially similar to the protected classes that are listed in RSA 193F:2. So if a student is bullied on the basis of one of the protected classes in RSA 193F:2, they have a cause of action already existing in law under RSA 193:38. I would also like to point out that there are other causes of action that students may file based under common law. Common law is sort of the general understanding to mean that a body of law developed primarily from judicial decisions based on custom and precedent, and it's not necessarily included in statute or code. There's a case from the New Hampshire Supreme Court. It's called Marquet v. Eno, 139 New Hampshire 708 from 1995. In that court case, through common law, the Supreme Court ruled that school districts have a duty of supervision over their employees. So there's two causes of action that already exist under law, one under RSA 193:38, and again under the common law aspect. It's also important to note that the bill as written states that, I'm on line 3, any person aggrieved as a result of gross negligence may initiate an action. We have to also remember that the aggrieved person may not necessarily be the victim of bullying. It may be the perpetrator. You may have an alleged perpetrator, the bully, him or herself, who doesn't believe it was bullying. And under the statute, the way it's written, school districts would be subject to lawsuits from both the victim, the alleged victim, and the alleged perpetrator. So we're getting hit by both sides. That doesn't seem to be the intent of the bullying statute, and it's certainly, I don't think, good policy to allow somebody who's been deemed a bully to sue the school district to determine whether or not they are or not a bully. So those are the bases of NHSBA's opposition to this bill. There are already causes of action that exist. I'd like to remind the committee when the bullying statute was amended in its current form, I believe in 2009 or 2010, it passed out of House Education 19-1 without a lawsuit provision in there. I think it's also important to note that when Senate Bill 263 was working its way through the legislative process in 2019, some members of the House Education Committee voted against Senate Bill 263, creating private causes of action against school districts. But yet here we are with another bill, also creating private rights of action against school districts. So I'm not quite sure that that is consistent. But with that, NHSBA opposes the bills. It's not necessary. We believe that RSA 193:38 also protects students in these circumstances. We think there are common law provisions that students can initiate a lawsuit against a school district, to say nothing of federal recourse under federal anti-discrimination laws. So with that, I'll conclude my testimony. I'm happy to take any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you, Mr. Christina. I think that Senator Hennessy has a question for you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Christina. So my question has to do with the protected classes. I know especially the younger kids, they don't discriminate based on protected class. Sometimes they discriminate because you have genes from last year, or your jeans are too short, or the child is a little chubby or a little skinny or a little short or a little tall, or their hair doesn't look that good on one day or another. And there's no real reason for being bullied. The bullies just stick to it. So what is the protections that we have right now under these RSAs if you don't fall under a protected class?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Senator. The interesting thing about RSA 193:38, that was a very expansive statute, as I'm sure you're aware, Senator. And the protected classes are about as broad-based as you could possibly get. If somebody were, if a student were being picked on for the reasons that you stated, that may fall under family status. That may fall under the 193 F2 socioeconomic status. So I understand the point that you're saying. The younger kids, they pick on other kids because of the way they look or because of the clothes that they wear. I think the other aspect relative to that we have to be mindful of, Representative Cordelli stated that there were over 1,400 reported cases of bullying in 2019. NHSBA would proffer that that's a good thing, and that the more reported cases is a good thing. Not that it's good that we have lots of bullies, but that students are coming forward and school districts are reporting those to the Department of Education. So, and also I think, in the elementary school, while it may be bullying, we like to think that our teachers and principals are addressing that with the students at hand. It may be easier to stem bullying with kindergartners, first graders, second graders than it may be with older students as well.
Thank you, Mr. Christina. I think Senator Hennessy has another question for you.
Yeah, no, just a clarification on my last question. So just because in section 193F:2, it identifies people bullying occurring as for social economic status, physical conditions, obesity,
Yeah.
other personal characteristics. That doesn't make it a protected class and thus protected, and then give rights to individuals for lawsuit reasons. So I'm not quite sure how you're connecting that line with the other rights in the RSAs, because those aren't protected classes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question again, Senator. I hope I can clarify. Let's look at RSA 193:38 then. Age, sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, race, color, marital status, family status. That may invoke some sort of economic factor, disability, religion, national origin, all is defined in RSA 135:A. There's also protections, I believe it's under RSA 186:11, that also includes socioeconomic status. That per se does not give rise, that statute per se does not give rise to a cause of action. But I guess I would bring it back to the Marquet v. Eno status, where you have a common law cause of action for failure to supervise, which this seems to cover. The allegations and the concerns and the testimony in House Ed seem to be that school district employees and school district staff were not either following local policies or were not following the pertinent statute. If they're not following certain local school board policies or the statute relative to bullying, that seems to be a supervision issue, which may give rise to a cause of action under the Marquet v. Eno standard of reasonable supervision.
Thank you, Mr. Christina. Do we have any other questions from the committee members? I don't see one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the committee.
We have a number of people who like to testify on this particular issue, so I think we need to limit the testimony to 3 minutes, just to give everybody a chance to have their say.
Okay, I'm going to bring Representative Leon back in.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of Senate Education. I apologize for my previous technical issues.
It's all right.
For the record, I am Representative Erica Leon, representing Derry, and I serve on the House Education Committee. I will note that being ugly, having crooked teeth, or body odor is not a protected class, and many students have been bullied for those reasons. And the case in Manchester specifically referenced this statute as the reason why the parents could not sue for a true bullying incident. So this is a needed law. Bullying comes at a large human cost. There is a loss of confidence, loss of learning that happens frequently with bullying. And when parents are aware of this, they can better support their child to overcome these challenges. Then there's the physical harm to the bullied student. Students in New Hampshire have been hospitalized after bullying incidents, and some have committed suicide. But it gets even worse. Many school shootings are the result of a bullied child snapping. We haven't seen this extreme in New Hampshire, but it is a clear risk factor nationwide. Laws can't solve every problem that we face. Caring support from a network of teachers, administrators, and parents won't solve every problem either. What we can solve with the passage of HB 140 are those rare cases when parents are denied the knowledge they need in order to support their child when they are bullied at school. HB 140 will put schools on notice that they could be held responsible for failing to appropriately deal with bullying. Take the case of a middle school student in Nashua who was jumped twice on campus in September 2019. Other students filmed the attacks and shared them on social media, and the student and her friends continued to receive threats after the attack. The girl was uninjured in the first attack, but she suffered broken ribs and a concussion in the second. The school principal told the girl's father that there was nothing they could do, and she should either fight back or change schools. Fight back or change schools. That was the school's solution. I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, all of the students involved in a bullying incident that became physical would get detention at minimum. In middle school, I got detention to go along with my broken wrist for defending a friend from a boy who was hitting her. But recently, in that case in the Nashua girls, the girl was jumped from behind on video. The school decided it was a mutual fight and there was nothing they could do. I've heard that line before. My mother heard that said about a boy who was being bullied in her former middle school. Perhaps you've heard of them. Maybe you remember the transgendered boy shot dead in a middle school computer lab in California. One child there was a protected class. He was transgendered. but he was the bully. Statute 193-38 would do nothing in order to give a private right of action to the bullied student because the bully, not the victim, was a protected class.
Senator Leon, could you summarize?
Yes, I don't want to
you.
see, I can. I don't want to see victims of bullying that to see them unserved. I don't want to see a case where teachers don't have that little niggling of conscience, little bit of conscience there, telling them that they probably should make sure that their actions are justified in the eyes of a court or in the press. I want them to make sure that the best interests of the students are at heart. And by having a right of private action, they will have that little reminder that they need to put the students first. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the members of the committee? I don't see any. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next speaker who signed up is Megan Douglas. Megan, you appear twice in the attendees, so could you raise your hand for me? Thank you.
Megan Douglas, welcome.
Good
If you
morning.
can give your testimony in 3 minutes, that will be perfect.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Good morning, everyone. I am Megan Douglas. I am one of the attorneys who represented the plaintiff student in Gautier v. Manchester School District, the case that you heard Representative Cordelli mention earlier. I do need to get something clarified right away. My colleague Barrett Christina's representation of Marquez, as providing common law relief for students bullied in school is flatly rejected by my case, Gautier v. Manchester School District. This Supreme Court held that we, as plaintiff attorneys, representatives of the student who was bullied, could not use Marquez v. in order to assert a common law cause of action. So I just wanted to clear up that mistake of law. So I had planned to submit written testimony to the members of the committee today, and I apologize for not preparing it. The fact of the matter is that I was up quite late last night attending to the need of a client. See, when I'm a lawyer, I have to make sure that I look ahead to the needs of my clients. My client has a deadline coming up in a couple of days. And if I don't protect him from foreseeable harm and litigation, I can be sued for negligence, mere negligence. It strikes me that we send our children to school 180 days a year for 8 hours a day and entrust them to the care of adults who have a duty to protect them from physical harm, including from each other. But currently, there is absolutely no way to hold any of those adults and their school employers accountable for gross failures in protecting our children. Whereas I can be sued for negligence and malpractice, as can doctors. Our school professionals and their employers are completely immune from liability for gross negligence or willful misconduct in doing their jobs. And this goes back to the Bill Belichick. All that we want as plaintiffs' attorneys representing these children is for teachers to do their jobs. And I want to tell you that I was not always an attorney. I was a teacher. My father is a retired teacher. My aunt is a retired teacher. My godmother is a retired teacher. My two best friends are teachers, and all of them support this bill Do you know why? Because when teachers do their jobs, they don't have anything to worry about. All that this bill would do is hold schools accountable for repeated neglect of known harm to children.
Ms. Douglas, could you wrap up your testimony? We're running out of time here.
Yes.
Perhaps could you send your written testimony to us?
I could make my points in writing, and I would be happy to take any questions if there are any.
Okay, that would be great if you could do it in writing. Do we have any questions from the committee? None. Thank you very much. And we would appreciate if you would write your testimony, then we could all read it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Next, we have Marissa Chase.
Marissa Chase, welcome.
Thank you, Senator. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much, members of the committee. Good morning. I will be brief. I just wanted to take this opportunity as the Executive Director of the New Hampshire Association for Justice, a statewide professional association of trial attorneys who represent primarily plaintiffs, that it is very hard to bring a lawsuit. There are professional ethics requirements that prohibit attorneys from filing meritorious or frivolous claims. If an attorney were to file a frivolous or meritless claim, they would be disbarred. So we don't have a rash of frivolous lawsuits in this state. We have a very small and collegial bar. You know, as Megan Douglas was saying, and Attorney Barrett, Christina was saying, they can point to 2 Supreme Court cases where this has been an issue in the past decade. These cases are not brought lightly. I will also say that the Senate Bill 263 that Barrett Christina referred to, that has not been tested yet. There has not been a case filed using that law yet. And that's a good thing, because when you pass these laws that make a RSA not just a suggestion, but a penalty associated, that helps everyone to be held accountable. So our hope is that no lawsuits would be filed under the provisions of House Bill 140. It would provide accountability. It would create teeth to a very important statute, RSA 193F. And like I said, we truly hope that no lawsuits would be brought under this. We don't want to see children harmed. This is how our civil justice system works. When there are penalties in place, we tend to have better outcomes. And I'm happy to take any questions, and we'll also follow up with written testimony.
Thank you very much, Marissa. Do we have any questions from the committee members? I don't see one. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Next, we have Anne Marie Banfield. It looks like I have to promote her to panelist in order to allow her to talk because she's using an older version of Zoom.
Okay. Welcome, Anne Marie Banfield.
We can't hear you. Oh,
there she is. Now you're muted. And try to keep your testimony to 3 minutes.
Yeah, we still can't hear you. Okay. Maybe we should move on. Maybe she can figure out and come back.
Maybe calling in would be a better option since we can't hear you through Zoom.
Okay, I'm gonna change her back. And our next speaker is Kim Lavalley.
Kim Lavalley, welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and committee members. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Kimberly Lavalley and I reside in Mount Vernon, New Hampshire. I'm the founder of 2 charter schools in Manchester, New Hampshire, the Founders Academy Public Charter School and Spark Academy of Advanced Technologies. I'm speaking against House Bill 140. As a mother of 2 young adults, I continue to see the ramifications in our own home of bullying in one of my adult children. Bullying is a real issue and it requires our attention. Each investigation requires a great deal of time and personnel, and every investigation should be thoroughly investigated. Social media has continued to increase the challenge for all schools. There's never an excuse to ignore the bullying allegations when they're brought in. Public officials are representing their constituents. My concern is the current language of HB 140 may allow for unintended lawsuits. HB 140 also states parents may recover legal fees if they win, but public schools, including charter schools, would be unable to recover those fees if they win in the current draft. Legal fees and insurance premiums are expensive for all schools. Small charter schools can be challenged to find affordable legal representation and liability insurance. If the amount of lawsuits increases, so will the cost of insurance. We'll be facing higher premiums, higher deductibles, and higher retention costs. Insurance companies are beginning to see more nuclear settlements awarded over time in an attempt to punish the schools if found guilty. I appreciate the sentiment behind HB 140. We did not have a bullying law when my child was in school. The issue is the current draft. I believe trial lawyers will be benefiting, and it's not providing a reasonable solution and an affordable solution for schools for the long term. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee members? Don't see one. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Matt Southerton.
Okay. Matt Southerton, welcome. Right now you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. For the record, I am Matt Southerton and I serve as the president of the New Hampshire Alliance for Public Charter Schools. The issues that you are discussing today are extremely serious. They're complicated, and I have seen firsthand the traumatic and damaging effects that bullying and cyberbullying have had on our students. Our teachers and our administrators spend considerable time conducting bullying investigations and working with the New Hampshire Department of Education to conduct and protect our students. I think that you've heard a little bit about the costs that charter schools could suffer if this language were to go through, but I have another concern. I am very concerned about the many unintended consequences that HB 140 would have on the school communities across the state. I would ask you to seriously consider the damage that this legislation can do and will do to the important relationships between the school and home. One of the most critical methods for fighting against bullying and cyberbullying is the collaboration and the open communication between school and home during and after a bullying investigation. The looming possibility of potential lawsuits for any perceived missteps in this process changes the relationship as it reduces the level of trust between the family and the school. I firmly believe that this will negatively impact the quality of the investigation that schools are able to do, and it will pull the focus away from the very people that we are trying to protect, our students. Thank you, and I'll be happy to submit my testimony in writing.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you. Sonia, do we have anybody else?
We do. Our next speaker is Scott Perrin, who is on the phone.
Welcome. You need to unmute yourself.
Which you can do by dialing *6. There you go.
Thank you very much. My name is Scott Perrin. I reside in Manchester, New Hampshire, and I'm speaking today in opposition of this bill. While I understand absolutely every point that's been brought forward so far, and I agree with them, bullying is absolutely something that cannot be tolerated. Understanding where the responsibility for bullying lies is a joint venture and not just one of the schools. And I worry that the amount of resources that would be necessary to be able to accomplish this on the school administration level would take away from other necessary funding that our schools absolutely need for educational purposes as well. And so that too is lacking when we think about what administration and public schools need as well. So I just wanted to briefly state full opposition of this House bill, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thanks very much.
Next, we have Catherine Shea.
Catherine Shea, welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I remember 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll be quick. So good morning and thank you, Madam Chair and committee. I wanted to briefly just relay my support for this bill and describe why it's so important to my family and those of the neurodiverse, particularly autistic children who are our fastest growing non-intellectually disabled class, most vulnerable as they struggle with self-advocacy and are also often the victims of school staff and lack of training and understanding. I'm a parent to autistic children who have experienced bullying by other children and staff. Because of this, and my role as an educational autism advocate, which is a volunteer role in the state, I was asked to serve on a task force at the request of the governor to explore and generate proposed solutions for bullying in New Hampshire. Disabled children may be in a protected class, but that is not always recognized as such in schools. The current dispute resolution process, which was confirmed in the task force I participated on, and similar to other dispute resolution processes that we've recently discussed, did not know even how to define their statistics and couldn't break down the definitions of bullying and how they recorded the information that was incoming. We also recently discussed this dispute resolution process, as you know, which is very much broken and based on a Goliath versus David way. And although a civil lawsuit sounds nice, as we've recently heard about other dispute processes with schools, families don't have money for a civil lawsuit. And common law is not a practical way to resolve a very obviously wrong situation. So there are no protections or processes or real teeth in the process. I'm sorry, I just lost my place. And so therefore there's nothing actually enforced. And I can vouch for this for at least 2 families of other autistic children. These are families that you would recognize from being in the news. Bullying was the final factor that pushed their unsupported, unhappy, and mistreated child simply for being different over the edge. And those children are no longer with us. One of them was the same age as my son, who's also autistic. And that is one of the reasons why I do what I do today, to try to help these children in our state. So I'm asking you to please support House Bill 140 and hold schools accountable. Thank you. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Catherine. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
I had Alicia Houston signed up to speak, but I don't see them in the attendees column. If you are here, could you please raise your hand? Before I go back to Anne Marie Banfield, we have an M. Ryan with their hand raised, so I will bring them in. Oh, another older version of Zoom, so I have to promote them to panelists to allow them to.
That's Moira Ryan. Welcome. You need to unmute yourself.
Okay, I finally figured it out. I apologize for having an older version of Zoom. We use something else in the government. I was not going to testify. I did sign in favor of this bill, but I am going to submit a written testimony because one of the issues I have that was not brought up here is that for a school to be in compliance with bullying basically means that they have to file a report. And I don't know if you've ever seen the show on HBO, 13 Reasons Why, but it actually is a good representation of how students reach out and don't get help. And I feel like, my duty as a nurse is to advocate for my patient and protect them. School districts is to protect their students and to educate them. If they're not willing to protect them and educate them, what are we doing here? Because, this is what we need to do. So I will actually submit a written testimony because I've known schools to not even do the following the policy of filing a report. And I ask that you support the bill. That's what I'm going to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions?
I will take any questions. I apologize and thank you for letting me speak.
Okay. No problem. Like your testimony. And we look forward to your written report.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any questions by the committee members? Seeing none. Thank you very much for testifying.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, I have called through everyone who signed up to speak. So I'm going to try Anne Marie one more time. And if there's anyone else who wants to speak, please raise your hand, which someone has. Oop. I'm sorry, she moved. Anne Marie, are you there? We cannot hear you. I'm sorry. Maybe you could try calling in on the phone. Madam Chair, should I move on?
Yes, please.
Okay. We had a hand raised, but now the hand is down. So I don't think we have any other speakers.
I do see Emery Banfield back.
Yeah, I just put her back.
Oh.
I just saw, I saw it happen again.
Yeah.
Shannon Bouchard, if you are interested in testifying, we just see your hand going up and down. So if you're wishing to testify, if you want to raise your hand and hold it, well, we can bring you in.
Again, I'll just bring her in. I'm not sure what's happening.
Shannon Bouchard.
Yes. Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members.
Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. I am going to read a letter that I wrote describing my situation, and I am in support of HB 140, and I will read it real quick to you. My daughter was bullied from kindergarten on, and I thought it would stop. It was only on the bus and I reported it, so I figured my daughter was just a very sensitive child. And it wasn't that bad. I was reassured over and over by the teacher at her IEP meeting, and I was assured by the bus company that there were videos recordings on the bus and they handled all acts of behavior and would be keeping a close eye on my daughter. I trusted this school immensely as I knew them from educating my older sons 10 years previously, though they were not special education. I felt they were keeping an extra eye on my disabled, sensitive, sweet daughter. Meanwhile, she was enduring harassment and bullying every day. They were saying and writing mean things to her. They would send her home with special education reports on the bus instead of mailing them home. And then these reports would be opened from the bullies. And when I got them, because they were opening private notes and reading them and laughing at her. As I was researching, I found out that this is the most common form of bullying. It often starts in elementary school and it has its peak in middle school. This is exactly the course of my daughter experienced with our school district that I loved and trusted. I had been a student with them also. They would raise, sorry, I lost my place. I had been a student them there also. They would make her feel excluded and humiliated. This was often carried out by a boy on the bus, and others would then join in. For me, it was hard to recognize. I was being constantly assured that it was being handled. This boy, before the start of middle school, had the whole school bus laughing at her because I volunteered at school and I had a short haircut. This boy on the bus and in the classroom started telling everyone that my daughter's mom was really a man. I spoke with the teacher, never thinking it was really picking away at my daughter's self-esteem and causing tremendous stress on her. This seemed silly, yet to my daughter it was mean and harassing, causing her to withdraw socially and not want to attend school. My daughter has been missing so many days her entire career for illnesses. I kept taking her to see our pediatrician. The school during IEP meetings made it seem as if I was like the cause of her missing school and could even be charged with truancy. I even had all my pediatrician notes that I was providing to them. On the playground, the bullying was so bad that they ripped her hair out, with only the teachers having the bully stand at the wall for the rest of recess. I was never informed of the incident and learned months later from my daughter's friend when she was over. I prayed these kids would stop now that she was in middle school. When the combined towns in my district and the anti-bullying program that they talked about, it would not be tolerated. The behavior did not stop, and because of my own disability, I couldn't drive her to and from school. The boy was suspended off the bus a few times. I learned through my daughter. My daughter learned.
Shannon, you have 1 minute.
Okay, my daughter learned to keep quiet. She never said anything. I guess I can't read it.
Do you have that written testimony?
Yeah. I wrote, children with disabilities are 2 to 3 times more likely to be bullied than non-disabled children. This form of bullying can be especially dangerous because victims may be defenseless against the perpetrators and may have a harder time communicating about the bullying to others. And this is very true for my daughter because her disability was a severe speech disorder. It made it hard for her to get across to the teacher what was happening. Even if she spoke up or cried, it was kept from me, and she never told me again for fear I would call the school and it would be even worse. I expected the school district and bus company to protect her. My daughter was feeling depression and anxiety. This was only ever happening on school days. My daughter was happy and her normal self on non-school days. She was never sick at home. I brought this up during an IEP meeting, and again, I was promised that they would see the bullying or something was going on. I learned that summer during her renewal to go on to high school because she broke down during the meeting telling them that she was not going to have a learning center because that's the most of the harassment was due from. My daughter would dissolve into tears.
Shannon, could you wrap it up now, please? We're running out of time.
Okay, I had enough. I decided to go before the school board, which was first denied. I used the Disability Rights Center to help me. I have this all written for you guys. My daughter suffers from depression, anxiety over, want to avoid settings in which bullying may occur. She has lower grades. She has suicidal thoughts and is on medication now. And I found that she was using self-harm by the way of cutting.
Well, thank you very much for your testimony. If you have this written down, would you send it to us?
Yeah, because I use the MAH law, and the law lets you change districts. But the problem is the new district also has a push-out education, and my daughter is refusing school because she doesn't want to access resource room for fear of the bullying will continue in another school. So I'm still fighting, and that's why I support this bill, because something needs to be done for parents that don't have the means to get a lawyer, because we have one, my husband's the only one working. I'm disabled full-time permanently from multiple sclerosis. So it's hard. And when they say, oh, just use the law already exists, you can just get a lawyer. Not everybody can. And people are counting on their educators and the administrator to protect their children.
Shannon, thank you very much for your testimony. I understand what you're going through.
Thank you so much for your time.
And if you have this written down, we would like to have it so we can put it in the record.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee members? I don't see one. Thank you very much, Shannon, for coming here.
Thank you. Thank you for talking to me.
Okay, we have no other speakers.
Did we manage to get Anne-Marie Banfield back, or is she gone?
She's still there, but did you want me to bring her in again?
Only if we can actually hear her.
I also just want to note, so Anne-Marie Banfield emailed me just now her written testimony, and she apologized for her inability.
Okay,
to
great.
connect.
Then
know,
I think we're all set.
Similar issue.
Okay. So we have no more speakers on 140. Good. That ends the hearing on House Bill 140. And now I think we're ready for House Bill 182. And we have Representative Ladd here. Yes, he is. Welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Thank you very much, Senator Ward and members of the Senate Education Committee. For the record, my name is Rick Ladd. I live in Haverhill, New Hampshire. I'm a representative for Haverhill, New Hampshire, and I also chair House Education. I'm here today to speak on HB 182 as the prime sponsor. As you must know, that we really live in a highly mobile society now, where students are often traveling and transferring from one school to another due to parents having changed their jobs or other circumstances in the family. So with this legislation, there are two basic changes that will better support and help these students in the transfer process, which is a very difficult process, both academically, socially, and emotionally. The bill requires the receiving principal to grant credit towards student graduation for a similar course earned at an approved sending school. Now, number two, if the principal opts not to approve that course, then the principal must show reasonable justification for not or for denying that course. That would lead towards high school graduation. The bill also identifies what an approved school is. It's very similar to language elsewhere in statutory law, so I won't go into that. This law, this proposed legislation just mirrors statutory law currently used to approve or disapprove similar coursework of a military child who's transferring from one school district to another, both coming to New Hampshire or from New Hampshire to another school within New Hampshire. It echoes RSA 110-D:8, Roman 1. That this language is already there in that for military students. However, there's not the same support in our statutes for a student that's not a member of a military family. And we're just looking to try to equalize the playing field here. We have several examples that have been presented in education, which give us cause to really move forward with this bill. There was a student that moved into and I won't mention names or school districts, into a school district who had taken algebra as an 8th grader. Gotten an A in that school, met all the standards, all the requirements. That school was an accredited school. That school was an approved school. The receiving school did not accept the credit, simply because it wasn't taken in the 9th grade. And another situation where the individual had taken a social studies US history course in Maine, which is recognized by our state, by the Interstate Agreement Compact, so it's an approved school. The school was also an accredited school, but this student took US history in the 9th grade. The receiving school taught US history in the 10th grade. So the student was forced to take the US history again in the 10th grade, rather than giving credit for that course which had been previously taken in the 9th grade. By the way, that student was a gifted student, one that had an IQ in excess of 140. Very, very, very bright student, and became more of a discipline problem when he had to sit there and take that 10th grade course that he'd already mastered and could identify with all the content in that subject. So this bill is about fairness. We also have, when I worked with Virginia Berry, who was Commissioner of Education before Commissioner Edeblue, and Paul Leather, the Deputy Commissioner of Education, we put in place in the state competencies. We are gotten away from seat time. You must have so much seat time in a grade or in a class before you can be promoted. That's changed. We're now looking at competencies. A student is placed where they're ready, where after if they've mastered the skills and knowledge in U.S. history, they get credit for that course. So we have 43 required courses in a high school. Each one of these courses has a competency assessment that's required by Education 306, the minimum standards for public school approval. If a principal denies a kid the course that's being transferred in, the principal could always administer this competency assessment and to determine if the child knows it. So I think this bill that we're proposing to you is very logical. It levels the playing field between transferring military families and those students which are part of a family which is not in the military. Thank you very much for your time, Senator and members of the committee. I'm willing to take questions if so asked.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you and have a good morning.
We will.
Next, we have Representative Erica Leon.
Erica.
Thank you very
Welcome
much,
back.
Madam. Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of education. I will be brief in my testimony. I simply want to reinforce Chairman Ladd's statements and reinforce that we've spoken with the Department of Education, and the problems with transfer credits are real. They are happening now, and there are multiple students who are not receiving credit for coursework towards graduation for classes that they've taken through VLAX. I urge your support of this bill, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Senator Hennessy has a question.
I apologize, Madam Chair. This may have been a question for Representative Ladd, but for the, I'll ask Representative Leon if that's okay. For the reasonable justification for denial, who looks at that and determines the reasonability?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. I'm not sure exactly who would be looking at that. So I'm not sure if the chairman could better answer that.
Is Mr. Ladd still there?
Yep, I can bring him back in.
Can you answer that question from Senator Hennessy?
Yes, I will try to for Senator Hennessy. The reasonable justification is a reasonable justification is in there. That's to be determined by the principal of the school. Reasonable is language which is used many times in language, and it's a kind of a legal term. What is reasonable? What is negligent? All that. But the purpose of this being placed in there means that there has to be a reason provided to the parent or the child for the denial of the course. There's no requirement for that right now. The principal can simply say, I'm not approving this course. There has to be no communication to the parent regarding that or to the child. That is our concern. So we're looking for reasonable justification. I would say reasonable justification would be that the child cannot meet the competencies, can't meet the standards that we have for that similar course in our school or in that school.
Senator Prentice?
Follow up, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Thank you. So Representative Ladd, thank you for coming back on to take my question. So if the parent doesn't agree that the reasonable justification, say, for example, they're in a small district and it would be difficult to reschedule the student into another class, is that, and the parent doesn't think that's a reasonable justification, what is the recourse for the parent?
The recourse, of course, in the military side, when you're looking at RSA 110:-D:8, there is a whole process set in the military code that we have, the compact, and this compact is in all 50 states. And there's a legal route that the child and the parent can take. We did not put that in the bill right here. We see that the next step would be, of course, the appeal to the school board.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Senator Prentice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And actually, I have a question for Representative Ladd.
Okay. Are you available to take another question?
Yeah, I should have gotten in the car and go to my next meeting.
Good morning, Representative Ladd, from one of your neighbors here in the Upper Valley. So just a quick question. What about, we're talking, so when I'm looking at this, it talks about graduation for similar courses and programs that have been satisfactorily completed. What about, standardized testing, high stakes exams? Is there any is that transferable? Has that been considered as part of this? Does it need to be?
Yeah, that's another way that when we talk about reasonable justification, there are a number of norm reference tests. There are a number of tests which test areas that we don't test in this state. We do reading, writing, the language arts side, and mathematics. All the remaining testing is not done by the statewide assessment. It's done by the local school district. And there are a number of assessments, you're correct, that can be given within that. If you've taken the time as a district to align what that test is testing for and what your course is teaching. So they have to be aligned together. But I believe in discussions we've had in the education hearing numerous times that districts have done that. They've taken these old criterion reference tests and they use those. That would be another way to assess or determine whether the student had mastered the skills in your curriculum.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Ladd.
More than welcome.
Any other questions from committee members? Seeing none, I think you can hop in the car and go wherever you're going.
Well, I was actually going down to Hanover.
Oh, okay. Drive safely.
Thank you.
Any questions for Representative Leon? I guess not. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Becky Wilson.
Becky Wilson, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, members of the committee. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Thanks so much. For the record, my name is Becky Wilson, and I'm here today representing the New Hampshire School Boards Association. We certainly appreciate the drive for creating this bill to ensure that students are able to sort of stay on track as they're moving from school to school. However, the way it's currently proposed, NHSBA is in opposition of this bill. In the beginning, it doesn't identify whether it's speaking, when it says approved school, whether that is speaking to approved programs at the Department of Ed or whether it is simply a program that's approved under an attendance approval. There's also, I know there's been some discussion about the need for this bill specific to VLAX. There's many reasons in which a student's credit at VLAX may or may not be considered, but it's part of a much bigger process. When students are transferring from school to school, whether it's in-state or out of state, school counselors and administrators have a lot of direct conversation and take great care when they're looking at transferring credits from one place to another for a student. They have to try to match the previous credits that have already been granted, depending on what stage the person is moving into the district, whether they're a freshman or a senior. They have to look at the competencies for courses from the other school in which the student is transferring from and try to equate that to competencies in their program of studies. And as every local school board creates their own program of studies, sometimes things are taught in a different sequence or in a different order. And school counselors are typically the ones that are calling and talking directly and having conversations with the previous school about what's been covered in some of those courses that the student is transferring in with those credits. They also have to look at the time of year in which a student is enrolling. It's much different if you are coming from a district where perhaps credits are awarded at the quarter or the half year as opposed to the end of the year. If a student moves in October, that's a very different conversation than if a student is moving perhaps in March and has already been awarded certain credits for the first half of the year. And they also are making sure that they're placing students in courses that cover the same content that is needed and that they're not necessarily repeating. And the order in which content is presented is certainly a local decision in terms of curriculum planning and instruction. There's also a difference between students who may be taking an outside course who are already registered in a local high school with approval, sort of through an ELO type experience. Those are planned programs for ELOs. The school is working with the student to talk about what that credit would entail, and they're getting prior approval prior to taking that course. It's maybe different if a student's pursuing a course just on a personal interest and then is bringing that back to the district. Most credits are accepted by districts. From an association standpoint, we don't hear a lot of this issue anymore. There was some times when VLAX had first started where there might have been some confusion, but we certainly haven't had any recent issues where students have transferred from another district into a different district, and VLAX has been a concern. Credits are often accepted by the receiving school, even if they don't translate into the exact same category. They may be counted as elective credits, depending on what the course covered in the previous school, but it's certainly not gonna, it doesn't necessarily shorten or lessen the number of graduation requirements that the student might have to still meet. But graduation requirements for local district diplomas, those rest with the local school board, and it is important for high school administrators to ensure that those students coming into that school have met the competencies towards graduation in order to be able to be considered for the local school board diploma. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? I have a question. Do you see any advantage in having sort of consistency across all the public schools as to what they teach and when they teach it? I mean, it seems to me if somebody is teaching something in 9th grade and somebody else is doing it in 8th grade and this kid can't get credit for it, somehow it just seems to me there should be, in the public school system, should be consistency, at least in some of the major topics across the state.
Thank you for the question, Senator. I do, the 8th grade to 9th grade, having been a previous high school administrator, is sort of a different conversation in my personal opinion. There are many districts where 8th graders are enrolled in a high school level Algebra 1 course in their local district, knowing that they're then transferring to the same district's local high school, and there's an agreement that that course meets the 9th grade algebra competencies. They're taking it a year early, but it's a planned earn of that credit. Many districts teach algebra at the 8th grade level, but they don't necessarily meet the Algebra 1 competencies that lead towards high school graduation. Again, those are conversations that I think typically happen at the high school if a student were to move in, to call the previous district and say, was this a 8th grade Algebra 1 course, or did this algebra course meet our 9th grade state standards and competencies for Algebra 1? Local decision-making in terms of what makes up a local diploma has always been left to the school board. Developing competencies is something the Department of Ed has told every district that they need to develop their own competencies to show that students have met the standards that are required. Those are local decisions. And so I think what is consistent, obviously, is the standards that need to be taught, but how you teach those and what competencies and project-based learnings or performance-based assessments that students are taking to show their competency, those are all very local decisions.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any more questions from the committee? I see none. Thank you very much, Ms. Wilson.
Thank you so much.
That is everyone who had signed up to speak to House Bill 182. We do have a hand raised. Jerry Frew.
Welcome again, Mr. Frew.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I will be very brief. As Ms. Wilson has very eloquently stated some of the local control issues and locally controlled competencies, and how closely school districts do work to accept credits. I believe that there is a lot of work to enable the granting of credits and not disable the granting of credits from our experience. Also, I would just like to point out that even within some districts, Algebra 1 that's offered at the 8th grade level doesn't necessarily receive the credit toward high school graduation. If the student were to take the same course in 9th grade, they would receive a credit toward graduation. In 8th grade, they don't receive the same credit, but that's a local decision. And I think the integrity of local decision-making has to remain intact for a variety of reasons. Also, with full disclosure, I sit on the board of directors for VLAX in a different role. I've been on the board for about 5 years now. I would like to address the issue because VLAX has been invoked by some of the previous speakers. And in our board level discussion, I have directly spoken with the Chief Learning Officer, Steve Kozakowski, and asked if school districts are still having difficulties accepting VLAX credit. And he will admit that several years ago, that was a more widespread issue than it is today. That most VLAX credits are accepted without issue throughout schools in the state. And I've heard it said several times that VLAX credits are not accepted in local districts. And the conversation that I've had with the VLAX person from the board perspective, because that was a concern. And Steve indicated that there are very few incidences where VLAX credits are not honored at the local level. So I just wanted to make that statement. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Prentice has a question for you.
Yes, I do. I have a statement and a question. So Mr. Frew, my daughter did take a VLAX program. It was Spanish and it was accepted here in our school district. In fact, they recommended it because it was an extra course that she needed to do and it worked seamlessly and it was handled locally. So I want to make sure I'm hearing this correctly for you. And I think in part, not in part, in whole, Becky Wilson may have said the same thing. Is it your feeling that this is already being handled locally and that this legislation is unnecessary? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, it's my feeling, and our members don't cite this as a problem, that there's a lot of collaboration and acceptance between school districts to accept. The military compact issues are accepted. We don't hear, again, it's almost like this is one of those solutions in search of a problem. I believe that it could be overstated. We do have local competencies that have to be met with all of, that's the regulations now. And so school districts have to make judgments if the local competencies have been honored. And so I do believe that this is not a widespread problem. We don't hear this from our school district leaders.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Frew. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you very much. Do we have Nat Green from DOE here?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. He just moved on me.
Hey, Green, do you have anything to add to this discussion?
Hi, good morning, Madam Chairman. At this time, no. I know that, every now and then we do hear from, a parent or a school that there's concern over whether VLAX credit is being accepted. I don't have any evidence right now of a specific school or district that I could point to, but we do know that from time to time we do hear that from the field.
But what about credits from another school when the child switches from one district to another? Has there been a problem at all?
Generally, there hasn't. In one or two cases, oftentimes when a school has additional requirements beyond just the individual standards of a course, because again, standards tend to be the same across courses across all the schools in the states. Districts are able to add additional requirements that they want to add on to that. A good example of this might be like a health course. In one school district, they might be teaching the health standards and just the health standards, where in another school district, they might add on a community service component as part of their health course. And that would sort of be outside of the normal health standards, but that school district has chosen to make it a part of those requirements. So if a student were to transfer from one district into that other district, that second district might ask the student to meet the community service requirements to be able to then receive credit for that health course. We do know that that does occasionally happen. But usually it means a student is meeting just some of the additional requirements, and then they're granted credit for that course that they took in another district.
Okay. Anybody wants to ask questions? I guess not. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I don't see any other hands raised for House Bill 182.
Okay, good. Then we'll close the hearing on House Bill 182. And I think that we are well ahead of ourselves. And we can go on to the last one, which is House Bill 278. And the sponsor is Representative Hill.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Good morning, Gregory. How are you this morning?
Thank you very much for inviting me. You've had some weighty topics to this morning, and I've enjoyed listening to the testimony.
Good.
I'm here this morning as Representative Greg Hill. I serve the area of Northfield, the town of Northfield, and 1/3 of the city of Franklin. I think you are well aware, this will be the third time that I've testified here in Senate Education on this idea, not this exact bill, but this idea. And I want it to be clear to point out that this bill is different in some subtle ways than Senate Bill 81 that you heard earlier in this session. And I can point out those differences if you would like. As it stands, this bill has passed both chambers each year that it comes up, but something unrelated happens and the bill gets derailed. But I'd like to give you some new information this time, and hopefully we can get this across the finish line. This bill has obviously already passed the House this session. In a survey earlier taken this year by the charter schools, our existing charter schools, 28 of them responded. The question was, do you lease or own? And if you lease, who from, and do you pay real estate taxes? 28 responses. Here's the breakdown. 5 of the 28 own their own building. They pay 0 income taxes. 7 of the 28 lease their space from a nonprofit. 6 of the 28 lease from a district, a school district. And 10 of the 28 lease their space from a for-profit business. That's roughly a third. I'm sorry, roughly a third from a for-profit. Due to lack of suitable space otherwise. Almost all who lease from a for-profit entity have real estate taxes rolled into their lease payment. One does not, and I think it's important for you to realize they pay $87,654 in property taxes. That is a significant amount of money that could be used for classroom programming, I believe. This is not the only expense that upsets me as a frugal Yankee, however. These charters who have leased commercial space have to spend considerably to make these spaces suitable. They have to build kitchen spaces to qualify for Title I money. They need classroom space, and often they have little or no play space. As chairman of the New Hampshire School Building Authority, I can tell you that our other public school children have all of these things in their school buildings. New Hampshire schools are well designed to be school buildings. They are buildings for New Hampshire public school children by definition. This legislation is designed to give all our public school children suitable places to thrive. This legislation does not mandate a school district sell or lease to a charter school. The only thing mandated is that one set of public school officials think about their plans for their facilities, and if they have excess space, they offer it first to the other set of public school officials for the benefit of all. This legislation benefits taxpayers. School districts can generate revenue from stagnant resources, and charter schools can use scarce dollars for children's programming. But most of all, this benefits New Hampshire school children, all New Hampshire public school children, not just one group. And with that, I'll close my testimony. I'm happy to talk about the differences between the two bills. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has on any of these.
Thank you very much for being so accommodating. Do we have any questions from committee members? I don't, well, Senator Hennessy.
Under the wire.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Representative, for taking my question. So in the Senate bill that we had that was very similar to this one, there were some concerns that the local district would be forced to sell to a charter school. But it's my understanding that the facilities could be sold to someone else at a higher cost if that were offered. Is that your understanding?
That is my understanding, and I've again, this question has come up every time that we've brought this bill forward. The key phrase in here is that there's a market price that is created when a school district is trying to either sell or lease their existing building to a for-profit entity. That creates that new market price. So all that this legislation does is require that the school offer to the charter schools that same piece of property for that same market price. I can't see that it would come up very often. The standard question is on, what if a Walmart decides to buy their school building? Well, there's no way a charter school would ever be able to compete with a Walmart's bank account. So I kind of think it's a specious argument, but that's where it comes from. There is no requirement. Everything needs to be just done above board and with best practices in mind. It says clearly in here, it shall be the option of the school district whether to sell or lease the property under consideration at fair market value or less for a term to be agreed upon by the parties. Hope that answers your question.
Senator Prentice. You're muted.
All right, strike one for me today with muting. Just to follow up on Senator Hennessy's question, Representative Hill, and thank you for taking mine. So in comparison to SB 81, this, as you're describing it, would be more of a facilitating of this versus a first right of refusal.
I can understand that. In fact, I think of this legislation as a facilitating. I think we are creating a marketplace for traditional public school buildings to be made aware of by the charter schools, and then letting them connect and put together their own negotiations in good faith. I agree with you wholeheartedly. There's only a couple of differences between the two, SB 81 and 278, and they're mostly dealing with this idea of how the charter school and the traditional public school get connected. The SB 81 was the very first time that this had been attempted. And some of the language in there, I agree that it created an unfunded mandate where it talked about sending out certified mailings. And so that was removed, and everything would be handled just at the department level.
Follow up?
Quick follow-up. So when you say the department level, Department of Education or the local school, you know, the local school board, supervisory unit, whoever it might be locally?
Thank you for your question. I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
You said department. Are you talking about Department of Education?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So it's listed in the legislation that that the traditional public school district would deal with the charter school administrator of the Department of Education.
Okay, that's all. Thank you very much, Representative Hill.
Absolutely, happy to clear that up.
Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Good. I'm glad you like it.
Next,
Who
we
is
have
that? Next one.
Representative Maureen Mooney.
Okay. Maureen Mooney, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Are you able to hear me at this point?
Yes, we are.
Excellent. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Maureen Mooney, a state representative here in Hillsborough County, District number 21, which is only the town of Merrimack. I'm testifying in support of House Bill 278. As was just stated, the vast majority of New Hampshire public charter schools in New Hampshire lease their facilities and mostly lease commercial space that often requires expensive modifications as to learning space and safety. House Bill 278 would give the first offer of underutilized public school property designed specifically for educating students. This bill is in a unique position. It benefits simultaneously public charter school K through 12 students, as well as taxpayers. And with that, I would ask that you please vote to ought to pass on House Bill 278. And that concludes my testimony. Thank you for your time, attention, and as always, your service.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you.
Okay, Representative Ladd had signed up to speak. However, I don't see him in the Zoom anymore.
He may be in the car.
He may be. I don't see anyone on the phone either. So I will move on to the next speaker, Barrett Christina.
Mr. Christina, welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, good morning to members of the committee. For the record, Barrett Christina from the New Hampshire School Boards Association. We are opposed to House Bill 278. I'd like to talk about some specific language in the bill itself, and then perhaps talk about some of the broader policy aspects relative to the bill. First, when we look at the bill, I'm on page 1, where it talks about unused facility, means a school building owned by a district in which less than 10% of the square footage of the building is used for direct student instruction. I'm wondering how many school buildings are still open and operational and functional in which less than 10% of the square footage is being used for educational purposes. If the intent of the bill is to identify school buildings that have been shuttered or closed by the local school district, then I think it would be much clearer in the bill simply to state that. The other aspect is direct student instruction when we're talking about a school facility is not always clear. For example, cafeterias may serve dual purposes Gymnasiums may host a phys ed class, but also be used for the basketball game, or may also be used for a community recreational basketball league. Auditoriums are certainly mixed use spaces. So I'm not quite sure how those are going to be calculated when we're identifying the 10% of the square footage used for direct student instruction. It's also more likely than not that the unused space in a building is unused because it's unusable. That building may have been shuttered or closed due to health and safety reasons. There may be asbestos in the building. They can't meet Americans with Disabilities Act requirements, air quality concerns, and so on and so forth. So we need to ascertain why the building is being unused. We've had certain testimony, both I believe in the House Education and Senate Education, that we have a significant issue with aging infrastructure with our schools in New Hampshire. So I question how usable a building that was, built, 50, 60, 100 years ago can be used for a school right now, which, sort of leads me to respond to Representative Hill's comments that New Hampshire school buildings, I wrote some notes, I'm not sure if this is 100% accurate, but the schools were designed to be learning centers for students. Well, again, if the building has been shuttered, it's likely that that building does not meet the 21st century needs, learning needs of our students across New Hampshire. Going back to the bill on page 2, lines 13 through 14, it talks about offering a lease at fair market value to the charter school. I don't know what fair market value for a shuttered school is. I don't know if we have comparables across the state. So I'm not sure how we're even going to be able to ascertain what fair market value of an unused school or a shuttered school is. And last, relative to the policy, it's not particularly directly related to the bill, but I think it's important to note. I don't know exactly what the per student adequacy aid is for students in charter schools. Somewhere, I believe, I'm $7,000 or $8,000 per student. And in traditional public schools, the per pupil adequacy aid grant is about $3,800 per pupil. Maybe some differentiated aid gets to about $5,400 per pupil. But more than anything, this bill exemplifies that the amount of adequacy aid is not sufficient to operate school facilities, both for traditional public schools nor for charter schools. So if we want to make it easier for charter schools to be able to find space to educate their children, I think we need to look at the funding aspect of how we fund our building aid programs for traditional public schools, or adequacy aid for public schools, and the adequacy aid for charter public schools as well either. And last, I'm sorry, not last, 2 more points. I'll be quick, Madam Chair. School districts are not in the business of being landlords. We're in the business of educating students. I don't know if school districts and school boards and superintendents want to be landlords. They have to make sure that provisions of the lease are being complied to. And last, to the point that I believe Representative Hill said 10 charter schools are leasing space from for-profit landlords. So, property tax bills or property tax rates are sort of incorporated into their monthly lease statements. Perhaps a better alternative would be to create some sort of statute where if a landlord leases to a charter school, perhaps they can get some sort of tax credit on their property tax bill. That might be a better alternative. But for those reasons, NHSBA is opposed to the bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions from the members? Mr. Christina, would you jot down your objection so we can look at it?
I can certainly do that, Madam Chair. I'm happy to get a email off, probably not today, but I'll try and do that first thing tomorrow.
That would be great, just to have the points that you addressed.
I can
that
certainly
would be very
do that.
helpful.
I'll certainly do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the committee.
Yeah. So I don't see anybody from the committee having a question. So where do we go next?
So Madam Chair, the remaining speakers that I have are Gregory Davis, Kimberly Lavalley, and Matt Southerton, but I don't see any of them in the attendees column. So if they or anyone else would like to speak to House Bill 278, please raise your hand now. So I don't see any of them, but we do have Jerry Frew with his hand raised.
Okay. Jerry Frew, welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to speak, and I will keep it very brief. Without Mr. Christina knowing it, I yielded my 3 minutes to him for his speech. So I'll keep it brief. I just wanted to confirm with the committee that you received our written testimony for this bill, HB 278. It was submitted, I believe, either late yesterday or early today. I just want to confirm that you have our written testimony.
I will have to ask Ava, do we have it?
Well, let me take a peek in the OneDrive. Give me 1 second, Madam Chair. And who is it on behalf of? I'm sorry, Jerry.
Sure, New Hampshire School Administrators Association and Carl Ladd would have submitted that. It probably has an attachment.
Yep, we received it.
Okay, I will not take any more of the committee's time. You've been most patient with us this morning. Thank you.
Okay, we'll pull it up from the computer and read it, put it together with the rest of the stuff here.
Thank you.
So I don't see any other hands raised at this time, Madam Chair.
Okay. That means that we are done with 278. And now we have 11:05. So would you like to go into executive session to just discuss some of these bills, not necessarily executing any, but just talking about them and see where we are? Is that an acceptable?
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I think we should just wait until Senator Khan returns.
Yes, we should, but we can still discuss some of the bills that we have and see which way we're going to go. We're not going to exec any bills. I told him we wouldn't.
Okay.
So can I have a motion to go into executive session? Senator Prentice? Second. Bouchard, second. Okay, Senator Hennessy?
Yes.
Senator Prentice?
Yes.
Senator Bouchard?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we have all the bills from last week. And has any one of you thought about any of the bills, which ones would be that we can sort of talk about? And I have,
We took care of HB 500.
yeah, but that one is gone.
That's good.
Which is nice. I'm still working on the school nurses, still waiting for HHS to call back. What about HB 401? That's relative to the duty of school superintendents regarding having a designee for that person. Do you see any issues with it, Senator Prentice?
So, I mean, I agree. Once I understood what they were, so throughout the discussion, it became clear that it sounds like this has been held up in one place in terms of processing these criminal history record checks. So having a designee would allow for that to happen. I'm kind of sort of repeating what I think we already know. The question is, for some school systems, it might be an HR person. There was some different discussion, but there were some privacy concerns that I remember came up. And I think, so a criminal record check, an FBI compliant, biometric criminal record check is really, they're done at one point in time for whatever agency or organization requests it. And there are strict guidelines from the FBI as to who can look at these. But someone's criminal history or arrest records, if there's anything that Ken, I'm calling something in the conversation. You can find that out other ways. This is just strictly how that document that comes from the FBI would be handled. And am I on the right track here?
My understanding was that the superintendent may not be all the time available, and this is just to have one person, not a whole slew of them, but just one person that will take on that responsibility. And that person will go through training and learning how you read and interpret the criminal history. Records.
Chairperson.
Yes, Senator Prentice.
Does you hear that echo? Is that me? I agree with you. This is just about in the absence of who would it be. I just wanted to point out that one particular document is different than public access that anybody can Google online. So it's a snapshot in time and very specific. Because privacy came up. I don't have an issue with this overall, but
okay.
That's my 10 cents. That echo's gone, thankfully.
Now, any thoughts on 581, which was the special ed and putting the burden on school boards? And I certainly heard a lot of compelling testimony about how difficult it is for some of these parents to get the IEPs taken care of. And I also had two notes from one from Senator Reagan and another one from Anne-Marie Banfield is totally supported. And they have, Senator Reagan in particular had been sitting in on hearings on and kids with disabilities, and he strongly supports the bill. So this is something that we're going to have to deal with sometime in the future. Senator Prentice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've actually heard from a number of constituents, not just folks here in District 5, but parents have reached out to me, and probably others have heard from parents throughout the state who've had, who've had legitimate concerns and have had difficulty with the process. And it seems to make sense to me that this shouldn't be the fight that it is.
I know.
So, I mean, and I had my daughter, we went through this for an IEP and for a 504, and it was rigorous, but I didn't come up against some of the hurdles that have been brought to my attention by constituents. So I think there's, it just seems to make good sense, and it's also fair, in my opinion. But that's where I'm at right now. I'm not, particularly ready to vote without Senator Khan, as pointed out, but I'm certainly interested in hearing what my other colleagues think.
Well, I think he absolutely wanted to be part of that decision, and I said we would certainly not do anything to leave him out of it. Any other bills today that you have some thoughts on?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Sorry. The school nurse bill, what are we waiting for from HHS?
The Department of Education do not want any one of these positions in the Department of Education because the school nurse, unless that school nurse is going to be a health educator, like the commissioner said, we deal with teachers, we do not deal with nurses. So the school nurse, the field school nurse, will be taken out of the Department of Education's purview to check them out. The question then was the nurse who was going to be the support person in DOE. And he feels the same way, that there should be in a setting where there are nurses, where they deal with health issues. And again, he's not taking a look at her credentials as a teacher. So I have reached out to both of the Board of Nursing, and they don't want to have anything to do with it. They're not set up for it. So the other thing was the Human Health Department of Health and Human Services. Apparently, some of the field nurses have been calling the HSS, and they have got some help. So the question is to find out from Laura Shibonet, is this something that you accept, and can we set this up that this person will be at the HHS? And I see that Erin has something. Senator,
thank you. Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for bringing that up. I think that's a great idea. I know that I've heard from school nurses in my district that I think their webinars that DHHS has been putting on during this pandemic have been extremely helpful to the school nurses. So it kind of matches that. Hopefully we won't be in a pandemic and it'll be less time that this person would have to commit to all of this. But I think DHHS makes great sense and hopefully they will agree with that.
Well, I'm hoping so too. I just need to hear it directly from the boss. So that's where that bill is. Other than that, I really don't have any other issues. We have education hearing again next Tuesday, and we have another 5 bills. And then we really have to start thinking about executing some of these bills when we are all here. Ava, have you heard anything more about any more bills?
To my knowledge, this is it. I haven't heard otherwise from leadership or Josh, and I think this is it from the House. So
okay, that sounds good. So that if we don't finish next Tuesday or have any time to exec, then we should be able to have another full session that we can exec bills and discuss them. So, a motion to get out of executive session. Senator Prentice, Senator Ricciardi. And I'll take the roll call. Senator Hennessy.
Yes.
Senator Prentice.
Yes.
Senator Ricciardi.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we're out of executive session. Do we have to get out of a public hearing?
a motion to adjourn would be the next.
Motion to adjourn. Senator Prentice.
Motion to adjourn.
And I'll second that.
My dog seconds it too. All right, she's right there with us.
Senator Ricciardi.
Yes.
Senator Hennessy.
Yes.
Senator Prentice.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Maisie votes yes too. All
All
right.
very much.
Thank you,
And,
Senator Ward. All right.
We'll see you,
Bye-bye.
what, Thursday, right?
Yes.